It was in Horry County, South Carolina, but a place that keeps coming up, by the way. It's obviously vying for Ohio level status, am I right? And that is where Gregory Rice was doing some living. He had just, in fact, moved there to Myrtle Beach, another place that just keeps coming up. A place also known affectionately by the locals as Murder Beach. That's cute. This story won't change that at all in any way. And so with murders and deaths and all sorts, real estate is booming. So when Greg Rice, his longtime partner Meagan, and their kids moved here from Ohio, well, work is in Eden. Now, Papa Greg, he worked outdoors in landscaping, such like that. But old Meagan, she needed something of her own. And so, of all things, what Meagan Jackson did, she began transporting dead bodies for a living. Basically, she was driving cold ones to the coroner's office, to the medical examiner's office, to the airport, where they could set fly, go off there. It's a bit interesting, I guess, driving dead bodies around for a living, which sounds oxymoronic. And you can imagine she would be dead tired after work. Greg and Meagan had been together 15 years, both originally from Nasty Natty. Their relationship had its ups and downs like most do, but they had 4 kids together, and by and large, up until around 2019-2020, they were okay. They seemed happy enough now to be living in Murder Beach. And speaking of murder, Meagan, through her work, got to know a guy who was very involved in that, or in the after part of that. In their neighborhood lived Chris and Erica Dontell, and Chris himself had worked for the same transport company Meagan did, and he was now deputy coroner, if you can believe that. The Dontells and Meagan became really close, especially as COVID hit and things began to close down. Meagan worked with Chris a lot, and so through him she became good friends with Erica. She helped out the Dontell family through financial difficulties. As Meagan was herself quite independently wealthy, they got super close, and Meagan, in fact, began to confide in Erica and Chris some very hidden things. Things like shit's going down the drain between Meagan and Greg. They'd been together a decade and a half, but since they had moved to Murder Beach, and I mean, if that's not a bad omen, I don't know what is, things had been going down the shitter. Only a year or so after moving to Murder Beach, they had in fact separated. Meagan and Greg were now going through some custody issues, and Meagan would even whisper of darker things. Toxic relationships, abuse, drugs, alcoholism, all the hits, all the good ones. Meagan's work was going great, her not great. They were now living apart. Meagan, she'd gotten a house in the same neighborhood as the Dontells. Greg, he had his own apartment. During the week, the kids would be with Meagan. Weekends were for Greg. Now, Gregory Vincent Rice was 46 years old in 2020, about 10-ish years older than Meagan. He'd been married once before, and I guess that scared him off waiting at the altar a second time, as he never popped the question to Meagan. Greg loved to surf and to golf. He was big into Fortnite, comic books, and the outdoors. And he was well liked by all his friends. He was the guy people did things with, partied with, went on trips with. However, Meagan, she had the Dontell family supporting her. Chris and Meagan, they worked super close. Any case Chris got, Meagan would be his first call, and she would just drop everything. Immediately jump in her corpse van. I'm sure it's probably got a proper name for that, but I like it. And off she went. So while she was basically working with Chris non-stop, she was also discussing running a business with Erica. Pretty good. Except when it came to weekends and she would have to be back with Greg. This is according to Meagan, of course. And October 3rd, 2020 was one of them weekends. Time for Meagan to bring the kids to see Greg. However, this Saturday morning when she knocked, there was no answer. Greg also wasn't picking up his phone either, which is very weird because although Meagan wouldn't have a whole lot of positive things to say about Greg, one thing you couldn't deny was how attentive of a father he was. He would absolutely be there for his kids 110%. Absent father, he was no. She called one of his friends who had been working with Greg the day before, the Friday. He said Greg had been in grand form, not a bother on him. He had seen Greg that evening, as they logged off work. He was grand. Meagan herself had even talked to Greg on the phone the night before on that Friday evening saying, ring, ring, dropping the kids off. Are you ready? He said, thumbs up. All was well. Now, nothing. Meagan waited 2 days. Maybe he's just off for some kind of emergency. Lord knows. But she was also worried about substance abuse issues that had come up in the past, she would allege. It was the following Monday morning, with still no contact from Greg, and he hadn't shown up for work, that Meagan reported him missing to the police. It was strange, it was worrying, and now the search for Greg was on. Now, inside his apartment, when the police searched, they found his wallet was there, so he hadn't done a liger. His keys were in fact stuffed under a cushion on the porch. His car was there. In fact, the only thing missing was himself and his phone, which was weird. Like, why would you take one thing and not the other if he had indeed ran off somewhere, ran off willingly? I mean, he's probably not on a bender because his wallet was left at home. But why would you take your phone? People were worried. Meagan was worried. I mean, at the start. Anyway, because pretty soon she was like, sure, he'll be grand. Like, don't worry about it. He'll show up. I mean, she hadn't been on good terms with Greg for a while, so she was sort of, let's not cry over spilt milk. Now, at this stage. She was going around telling people he's a drunk, he's an alco. He'll be found in a ditch, in an alligator's maw, in no time.
M-E-A?
M-E-A-G-A-N.
What's your last name?
Jackson.
What y'all married for?
We weren't married.
We're married. The kids you got together?
4.
4, really?
I was with him for like 15 years.
You talked to Greg on the phone at about 9:58, you said?
Yes. And I told him that I was still good for taking the kids to your house in the morning to guest. And then everything was fine.
That was the last time you spoke?
Yes.
So you never physically saw him Friday?
No.
Though friends of Greg's would say they had no recollections of his drugs use. He wasn't into that sort of thing, like, at all. And when police searched his home, they found no evidence of drugs either. It wasn't any little sneaky stashes. The schnuckta, the devil's lettuce, the devil's dandruff, none of that. Someone was telling fibs over here, poisoning the well. And you know what? He's missing, and I'm glad, and you should be too. Let's get a beer. That was just one side of the story. Greg's friends would say he didn't do drugs, he didn't really drink much, and that he had become concerned for his life of late. He believed he was being followed. And he did the usual, which you have heard 1,010,000 times before. If something happens to me, it's the partner, the ex, the wife, the husband who done did it.
Did she always make the comments that she knew people? Do you think she would be capable of doing something? Not by herself.
Literally, he said, if I go missing, ask Meagan about it. But the police asked and she said, pfft. So we're shit out of options here. And the investigation would soon learn of the close relationship between Chris Dontell and Meagan Jackson. They worked together all the time. Chris would call her at the drop of a hat saying he needed help with a stiff one, if you know what I mean. She was very close with that family, like a much too close. And Meagan said she went to dinner with work colleague, wink wink, Chris, the night Greg vanished.
I was there with one of the coroners. Oh, Chris.
I mean, one of the reasons Greg and Meg had broken up was her work. When she began driving for the coroner's office, she worked all hours, and her 4 kids would say suddenly she became mean. She became drunk. She became abusive to her own kids, when before, back in Ohio, she'd been like, sort of like alright, like, maybe Myrtle Beach is haunted.
We have to 100% clear you out as quote-unquote a suspect in his disappearance. Okay. So some of the questions I'm going to ask are intrusive. They're uncomfortable questions.
Throughout these interviews and the search for Greg went on, Chris and Meagan finally did admit it. Alright, you got us. We were having a tiny, teeny, insy-bitty affair. No harm, no foul. To which the police said, I am Jack's total lack of surprise. It had been an open secret. Like, even Chris's wife, Erica, she was pretty aware of the affair. However, she hadn't left Chris. About a week before Greg vanished mysteriously from his apartment, Erica had received a text, an anonymous text, while Chris was at work one evening. The text basically said, your husband is, in fact, having a baby with another woman. That other woman is Meagan Jackson. Then Erica got a load of messages which were screenshots of explicit, slap-a-ham-worthy conversations between Chris and Meagan. The text messages even described a secret trip Chris and Meagan had taken to Florida a week before. When Erica confronted Chris about it, he denied it. I mean, initially, which is like, good one, brave defense. It's like shitting your pants and saying, no, I didn't. Well, everybody can smell the poo-poo. However, Erica didn't leave Chris after this all came out. Proof of him banging the lady like 2 houses down. Oh boy.
Your wife doesn't know. She knows a little bit, but not the full extent.
Erica was a real one, unfortunately for her.
What about you, Chris? Do you want me to answer it?
No, just
He'll be okay. He can wait.
And now with Greg missing, it didn't take a genius to figure out who had likely sent those messages. Because Chris and Erica might have good reason to want Greg gone. Meagan even texted Chris about Greg learning of their affair. How Greg swore he was going to tell Erica about it, but Greg denied being the one who had sent those texts. So a motive for Greg's disappearing seemed to be forming. A secret affair that's not so secret, and a man who might lose everything if the full extent came out. Though Greg had already let Erica know about the affair, maybe another motive might be revenge.
You know who has the motive? It's Chris. He has a lot to lose. He's got the motive. And I think you're covering us something up for.
I'm not.
Well, we're giving you every opportunity to get yourself out of the situation.
There's nothing for me to get. I don't know where he is.
Chris and Erica had, of course, been having an affair because there's nothing more sexy than dead bodies. Her coroner van probably stunk and not of decomposition. Erica was in it for, well, her relationship with Greg, it was breaking down, and she just wanted some je ne sais quoi, which is French for I don't know what. Chris, though, he would say he was never actually attracted to Meagan during this entire affair. She was rich. She was independently wealthy after a family member had passed, leaving all their money to Meagan. He just wanted a bit of that. Damn, I guess beggars really can be choosers.
I feel like I'm being investigated for something that I didn't do.
Chris, you are being investigated. You are. Absolutely. 1,000%.
Regardless, Chris and Erica were together the night Greg vanished. And they had motive to vanish him, Greg exposing their affair. The night before, they had gone out to dinner together. They had CCTV of Meagan using her phone at that dinner, so they knew they could track her via that. Police also knew that after dinner, they had gone home. They lived in the same neighborhood. Before leaving once again and driving to Greg's apartment. Now, neither of them said they'd gone to his place that night. They had, in fact, gone there twice. Meagan driving her corpse truck. Now, police didn't have Greg's phone, but they could ping its last known locations. And that night, it had gone to the same places Meagan's phone had, leaving his home and going to a funeral home of all places, before it finally switched off.
The van you were driving that night, it's on a license plate reader going in the area.
Well, it shouldn't have.
I have pictures of it.
I mean, that's fine, but it shouldn't have.
But it did.
Okay, but I can't explain it. Because
You were driving the van.
Well, I can't explain it.
When confronted with all of this, Meagan said, "That's mad." She had no answer. I guess it's just one of those mysteries of the universe I keep hearing so much about.
I hope it's worth it, Meagan. I really do.
Oh, Chris, though, he had a much better explanation, which I love, because Chris said, when he was asked by police, where were you driving all that night? He says, I was driving. I can't remember where I was driving.
Do you remember anywhere you would have done it?
And I'll be totally honest with you, I'm sure you know already, she gave me a while I was driving the car.
Because I was getting a little smooch on the pecker. The police, they said, hell yeah. They high-fived him and said, "You're off the hook." Kind of literally, actually, because at this point, they had nothing more to go on regarding Chris and Meagan, and whatever they likely did to Greg Rice.
I don't have anything to charge him, but there's no doubt I didn't do it. Well, Chris, I'm going to tell you this. If someone asked me to put a bet on it, I would say that you did.
It was over a month after Greg Rice vanished, November 7th, 2020, that some catfishers on Little PD River, about 20 miles from Greg's home, spotted something in the water. It was a tarp, but log-shaped. Investigating further, the smell, even if you ain't smelled it, was recognizable off the bat. The fishers simply began throwing up. They knew it was a body. The tarp had straps and zip ties and cinder blocks on it, an attempt to keep it at the bottom of the drink. But with the decomposition, the gases released, floated it right up. And it was Greg Rice. The coroner, not Chris Dontell if you can believe that, discovered 5 gunshot wounds on his body, including one directly to his temple.
Officials with the Horry County Police Department say Rice's body was found near the Little PD River at Pitt's Landing Sunday, more than a month after he was reported missing.
He loved his children, and his family meant so much to him, everything to him.
Steve and his family had to go through the agony of more than a month of not knowing where his brother was. He lives in Cincinnati, Ohio, and he says despite the obvious heartbreak he and his family are going through right now, he's grateful for the kind words he's received from people in the Myrtle Beach area.
From then on, with the discovery of the missing victim's body, police could actually just work their way backwards, right? Namely, because the body will always leave clues. And in fact, this body, Greg's body, had a big old one. In fact, it was wrapped around a giant clue, the tarp. Police could determine that that tarp had been purchased at a Lowe's, and there was a Lowe's, like, right down from where his body had been found. So, police went to that Lowe's, saying, hey, has anybody bought one of these tarps here early October around, you know, when Greg Rice vanished? And they said, yeah, actually, somebody did. It was all Chris himself doing the purchasing. From gas stations nearby, they found CCTV of Chris driving towards the river the night of, and then driving away. So besides being an Orioles fan, he had a huge problem. CCTV was found of them both in the area of the river the day earlier, before Greg vanished. That wasn't unusual. Meagan did like to go out to the woods to shoot her guns, which she had a lot of. What was unusual was what was seen in her car as she drove to the woods that day. A blow-up doll. Maybe that's who was in the car with Chris, giving him a... well, you know. But clearly she was practicing shooting a human-like object. Bit of an L trial run for old Megs over here. And also... Meagan is cuckoo. It was then they dragged Chris Dontell from his bed. Little sleep dust and morning wood still in Chris's clutches. They brought him in and arrested him. Meagan was taken in that very same day.
A deputy coroner with the Horry County Coroner's Office behind bars tonight, charged with murder. Police believe Deputy Coroner Chris Dontell is connected to the death of Gregory Rice. Rice was reported missing last month at Flint Lake apartment complex right off of George Bishop Parkway. Meagan Jackson there on the right is also charged with murder in the same case.
Both of them were fairly well screwed, I think it's safe to say at this point. But it was after, Meagan was arrested and charged with the murder of her ex-boyfriend, Greg Rice. Police were doing a search of her home, and they found some disturbing ass shit. Going through all her items in the house, they found guns, lots of them, including one that matched the caliber Greg had been killed with. But they also found alcohol, lots of it around the house, hidden away. A drink was never too far out of hand for old Meg. They also discovered locks on the pantry where the food was kept, locks on all the kids' bedrooms, their 4 kids, and on their windows. Meagan would lock their children in the room with an electronic lock, and then she would take the batteries out. The kids weren't even allowed to use the bathroom, get any food. The kids had been kept inside the house the entire time, not allowed food or even out of their bedrooms unless Meagan said so. Greg was likely aware of how she was treating his kids. She was getting hammered alone in her house while just locking the kids away in their rooms, basically keeping them prisoner. So yeah, child abuse charges were also added on to the murder charges Meagan Jackson was facing. And so we already know Meagan is capable of killing one person. Why not more? Because a witness would come forward after Meagan and Chris were arrested, and this was, in the TV, in the news. This witness said, oh, sure, I know her. Sure, I've seen them both actually at the bar where she bartended, saying she once overheard Meagan saying some pretty dark shit about her own kids.
She started going into great details about how much she hates her kids, how she never wanted them. She said, I think about killing them all the time.
Not great. Now, Meagan was actually pregnant with likely Chris's baby. Those texts Erica got were true. Meagan would give birth in police custody, and that baby would be placed with a family member to be taken care of. And something else would be discovered that was also not true, sort of. Those texts that Erica had received that were presumed to have been sent by Greg, a motive for his own murder. Greg hadn't sent those texts at all. Meagan had sent those texts to Erica, exposing her own affair. It's fucking... What? She wanted to force Chris to leave his wife, or his wife to leave him so she could have that little huggaroo to herself. That didn't happen, though. Erica didn't actually leave Chris after the affair was exposed. So then she was like, well, I suppose I may as well use this as an excuse to kill my ex-boyfriend. Which she did. And guess what? Prepare to be shocked once again. Meagan also lied about the inheritance. She had no money. Yeah, that's the only reason Chris said he was having the affair to begin with. I mean, I am putting words in his mouth, but basically he said he was only in it for the money, he wasn't attracted to her, and he had to put a bag over her head. Which, Chris, wow, that's harsh. It was all a lie. She was never rich. She was manipulating Chris, manipulating him to murder, or at least help murder her ex, Greg. And she was planning on pinning it all on him. She wanted to get rid of Greg, a Greg who knew how she was mistreating her kids and was planning on stopping it. A man who stuck in her craw. That's why she got Chris to buy the items to hide the body. That's why she got him to dump it. Both Chris and Meagan were due to go on trial. Due for sure, but that would end up being a nope for Chris. On the second day of his trial, he would take a deal from the prosecutor and agree to testify against Meagan. Now, of course, both Chris and Meagan pointed the finger at each other, saying the other one killed Chris. They didn't see it. The motive for both of them, they would say, was him exposing the affair, sending those texts, which we know he didn't do. Literally, Meagan would say Chris was so pissed off that Greg had texted his wife exposing their affair, so he called him out. He said, come to the funeral home. Meagan would say she was there, she saw them both. Chris was pissed off. She left. She doesn't know what happened after that. Chris, the exact same story, only Meagan was pissed off. I guess Chris's side was found to be more believable because he was less manipulative than old Meg's. He pleaded guilty to accessory after the fact and conspiracy to commit murder. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison.
That's what circumstantial evidence is. Now, in this case, we got a ton of it. A ton of it. Yes, you heard Madam Solicitor talking about the phones being together. Every single thing you heard Madam Solicitor say, guess who else was in there? Dontell. Then she goes at the end there, one of my favorite parts, the hand of one is the hand of all. So are they trying to tell you that you can convict Dontell? Just go ahead and convict Meagan Jackson too? Is that what they're trying to tell you? That if you can infer from all the evidence that Dontell is the one at the beginning of this, the end of this, the middle of this, and the one that has the most to lose, the one that has the motive? Deputy coroner, wife and kids? Meagan Jackson had written Gregory Rice off. She's done. 15 years. Gone. See ya. Bye. She's already done something. She didn't need to do anything with him anymore. But a deputy coroner? Don't touch me, man. I'm a deputy coroner. He's got something to lose.
Meagan Jackson finally went on trial in June 2025. It went about as well as you would expect it to. They killed Greg that night. Meagan shot him dead, brought him into the funeral home, and Chris bagged him up, transporting him to the coroner's van. He then dumped him in the river. Now, he was saying he did all this because he had seen Meagan kill Greg, and was worried, oh boy, he'd just seen Meagan kill her ex-boyfriend. He might be next.
Because I was afraid she was going to kill me if I told the truth. I saw Greg on the left side of the road walking towards us, just outside of the apartment complex. And I said, is that him? She said, yeah. She opened the door and shot him.
How many shots did you hear?
A lot. She said, put him in the back of the van. So I opened the back of the van and we started treating him just as we would treat any other body. And she smiled at me and said, did you do what you needed to do? What you needed to do? I said yes, and she said, good boy.
That's what he said testifying against Meagan at trial, of course. I mean, trying to dump it all. I mean, it would be to his benefit to dump it all at Meagan's feet, which he did very successfully.
We, the jury, by unanimous consent, find this defendant guilty. Signed by foreperson Jeffrey Roberts, dated...
Meagan Jackson was found guilty on all counts and sentenced to life in prison for murder. Life without parole.
Sentence of the court is that you be committed to the Department of Corrections for the remainder of your life. You'll get credit for any time, sir. All right. Thank you. Thank you. All right, anything further from the state?
Nothing from the state, Your Honor.
All right, the court is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And there you have it. The coroner, who was also a killer, surrounded by death. I mean, hey, listen, if anybody knows about death and murder, I guess they would. They just love dead bodies so much they needed some more. Oh, and by the way, the child abuse charges that were going to go against Meagan Jackson for, locking her kids up in their bedrooms all the time, that would actually be dismissed. The prosecutor would say they didn't want the kids to have to testify, which is fair, I guess, because Meagan, she was already sentenced to life without parole, so, I mean, what else are you gonna give her, right? Another life without parole? She's only got one life, I hope. Because she caused a lot of damage, and she could probably do a hell of a lot more. I mean, the fact that she talked about wanting to murder her own kids when she had just murdered her ex-boyfriend.
Well, the holidays have come and gone once again, but if you've forgotten to get that special someone in your life a gift, well, Mint Mobile is extending their holiday offer of half off unlimited wireless. So here's the idea. You get it now, you call it an early present for next year. What do you have to lose? Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Limited time 50% off regular price for new customers. Upfront payment required. $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan. Taxes and fees extra. Speeds may slow after 50 gigabytes per month when network is busy. See terms.